All right, so we're going to be looking at some more advanced features of Google Slides today, particularly features called the master slide, which is generally speaking where you would go to create a template. And the reason you would want to do that in this case, although there are lots of templates, there are templates available just to, give you a consistent look to your slide deck and make that easier for you as the person creating content in Google Slides. But another reason you'd want to create a template is so that you can create essentially student learning activities where there are certain items locked down in the background that the students can't accidentally move or delete, but they could draw or type or add shapes or images on top of them. We'll also look at some ideas for using the speaker notes and the gray space around the slides when you're not in present mode. So this presentation will kind of be flip-flopping between being in my present mode and also out of present mode in order to demo things. But when you build a Google slide, there's that gray space all around your slide that you're working on. That is stuff that isn't visible if you put your slide in present mode. But if your slide is not in present mode, it is visible and you can actually use it if you would like to. And then there's a speaker notes section as well. And then there are a couple of ways of adding some animated elements to your slides. One of them is, it is a little more advanced. I had to spend quite a bit of time practicing it, even to do something as easy as this, for example, that you see on the screen. But if you wanted to add animated elements, you could. Now, I've added a few and I'll demo one that may or may not be a good idea depending on the learning needs of your students. If you have students who would actually just be overly distracted by animated elements, then that might not be the best idea. Okay, so that's what we'll be looking at today, roughly in that order. But a couple other things we will talk about that are important for the templates and also for the use of the gray space is changing the page layout in your slides to be a different size than the standard size that we're always accustomed to using. So we will look at that as well. And then we'll end with a couple other cool features that you may not have known were available, but that, like I said, are not essential in terms of creating student activities. They just provide additional engagement and kind of some features you can do with the look of your slides. All right, the slide deck that I put in the chat for you is actually, and it looks like I might have someone new who joined and I didn't hear them for some reason. So I'm just going to be sure that I have everybody covered. Thank you, Starlight. So Starlight put the slide deck into the chat for you. Make sure you copy that link and maybe open it in Google Chrome before you leave today, but it will also be placed on the, it will also be placed on the hub along with all of the support documents, okay? And in that slide deck, it has a linked table of contents. So we will learn how to do that today in case you didn't already know how to do that. So that when you open the slide deck, especially if you put it in present mode, all of the links you see, not only on this slide, but on every slide, will be hyperlinks and will open automatically for you when you click on them. So on this particular slide, it's a table of contents, which means if you only want to see information about how to make a template, you can jump to that. If you want to see information about how to change the page layout, you can get to that. Using the gray space, creating a linked table of contents, and adding animated elements, and so on. And you'll see a little bit later in the slide deck when we get to the end of this first section on making a template. In fact, I'll jump there now and show you. Hold on a second. There we go. When you there's a home button. If you click, anytime you get to the end of a section, you'll see a home button. If you click there, it takes you back to the table of contents page so that you can go see what else you would like to do. So we'll learn how to do that today as well. Okay, so let's get started with our template. Now, this first part is just kind of your print instructions, because for some people, it's just nice to have a step-by-step list of essentially what it is you need to do. Your template can be as complex or as easy and low-key as you would like. But the basics to creating a template with some locked down objects that if you share it out in Google Classroom as an assignment with make a copy for each student, they're going to get a copy of the slide deck with these elements already in place, and they won't be able to accidentally delete them or move them. So the way you start is to start a new slide in your presentation, in your slide deck. And then in the top menu where you have file, edit, tools, and so on, you actually have one called slide. So you would click on that item in the top menu and choose edit master. And you're going to see a demo of this in a little bit. And then you add anything you want. You can add text boxes, shapes, images, graphics, borders, instructions, and you can also add placeholder blank text box areas for students to type in so that when they click in an area, it automatically gives them a text box instead of them having to create a text box. That's really important actually as kind of a pro tip for making this master slide as a student activity process work correctly. So again, these are just the basic instructions. Some people's templates, as you'll see when we look at some examples, look really complex, but just remember that all they are is a combination of these kinds of items. Text boxes, graphics, borders, shading, color, background color, and some text box areas for students. It's just that some people have created templates with a lot of those areas, right? And then the one I'll demo for you is a very, very simple one initially. Then when you're in, you remember you're in Edit Master at this point when you do this. So you want to save your master, and actually you also want to rename it. And so I'm going to actually add that to the slide right now. Rename and save your master, just so that we make sure we have that there for you as part of your steps. It's helpful if you rename it with a name of the template that you will recognize when you go to select that template in order to use it in your slide deck. Because when you're editing master, all that's doing is actually creating a layout that you can select. So you might remember in Google Slides, if you start a new slide and click on it in the left-hand thumbnail area, you get a layouts tool, and you can click on the layout to choose 2-column or title and body or, you know, big number. Well, when you edit master and create a new one and give it a name, it becomes one of the layouts that's available for you to select. So right now you're just creating a layout. When you go back to your slide deck, you need to choose that layout in order for students to be able, in order for you to be able to put it in the slide deck for your students. And as I alluded to earlier, if students will need to ultimately type on it, you're going to add placeholder boxes while you are editing the master. There will be a T little icon in the toolbar for text box, and then there will be placeholder options, and you will see that in our live demo that we're going to do right now. So I'm going to back out of my presentation. Okay, I'm going to go to this blank slide. I'm going to click on slide. So I'm following the steps I had mentioned on slide 3. I'm going to follow these steps. I'm going to go down to Edit Master. And I like to go down to where there's a blank one. Now, as it turned out, I've already renamed it. But as you can see, there's a rename button up here. Okay, so originally it'll just say something like blank slide, or it might say title and content. Or, you know, you can take any of these layouts. And if you don't see a blank one, you can grab a layout that you don't plan to use in this presentation, like this one, and just delete everything on it and then use that to get going with the blank one that you need. So I went down to kind of the blank one, and I already renamed it as Venn diagram template. So if I click rename, it just lets you type a name in the box. Now remember what I said, you can add anything you want to this template. Do be careful about typing too much, because ultimately you want this to be an activity for students. So I'm going to show you a really simple one, but you'll see that you do have, you know, a background option. So I can go to town and pick a background that has a pretty gradient or something like that. That's really dark, but I'm going to do it anyway. Done. Okay. I might have to change that because that might not work so well for what I was trying to do. And then to make a Venn diagram, so here we go. I'm going to make a circle. I'm going to select it I'm going to do Command or Control C, Command or Control V, and copy it. I'm going to flip it over here. And as you can see, right now, it's not working as well because I can't see the line behind the other one. So I'm going to flip my background back to transparent. Done. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is change the fill colors also to transparent for each of these. I should have done that before I copied it, actually. There we go. And now what I have are my two circles here along with the overlapping section. Now, if I want, I can pull these out to kind of provide more space. I can pull them up a little bit. This is not leaving any room on the slide for instructions, but you could put a text box up for instructions. And you might remember that from what I said before, this is a template and my students won't be able to move these circles, but they also would be required to create a text box in order to type unless I give them text boxes. By the way, I don't know if you knew that you can move objects in Google Slides by hitting Shift and the left and right and up and down arrow keys in order to make small adjustments in, I'm going to copy this one, small adjustments in the where something is located. So you know how sometimes when you grab a shape and move it, it kind of jerks and it moves more than you wanted. If you use the Shift key plus the left, right, or up and down, you can see that it only moves a little tiny bit each time I use the Shift key. Okay, and I'm going to move this one over. All right, so now we have the Venn diagram in place. Now there's no instructions on here, so if I wanted to, I could make it smaller and leave room for a text box with instructions, but I'm going to keep it really simple. Up here is the icon for the T for text box. Okay, don't just hit text box, hit the arrow next to it. This is where you get placeholder text boxes that will be there for your students when they get their copy of this slide deck that they're supposed to type on. Your goal is to have it such that if they type in the area of the Venn diagram, right, if they kind of type in the middle, it will give them a place to start typing their content that they wanted to add. And I can kind of tell where the letters are going to go. You won't be able to remove the section here that says click to edit master subtitle style. You can't remove those words because those are part of the master. Remember, this isn't the student's copy. This is just the layout that they're going to borrow. What you can do, however, is you can click in here and you can decide for them, you know, like what font you want them to use and what size and even what color and so on. Now, that may or may not be important for your students' needs depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish. Now, I can actually grab this text box, copy it, oops, sorry, and just drag it over here. Okay, now I have two, and if I wanted to, I can copy it again. I'm going to put it in the middle, but this time I'm going to shrink it because it's obviously a little too big for the middle section. Yep. And then I can move it up a little bit. There we go. Right, and now what we have is we have, for our students, we have a layout that will work for them when they get their copy of the slide deck. They'll be able to click in there and it will erase kind of those words and it will allow them to type their information on the left, middle, and right sections of the template. Now, again, you might want to do some other things. You might want to pre-label what it is they're comparing in this diagram, right? So you might decide that actually you do want a little more room right at the top or wherever so that you can add additional text boxes. And I'm just going to eyeball it rather than copying, even though copying would have been smarter, right? And then I'm going to move this puppy over and I'm going to move this puppy down a little, and I'll move this one down a little because that box is going to start in the wrong place now. And I'm going to shrink it. There we go. They're not exactly the same size, but you get the idea. So we'll let that go. You can make any shape a text box, or pretty much any shape. So you can click this rounded rectangle, for example. and you can compare or type in here whatever it is that you want them to compare. For example, if your students are reading a story with 2 characters or even have a song with 2 characters in it, they could be comparing character 1 with character 2. And you could put that over here. Not very pretty, but you'll see some really fabulous templates a little bit later because I'm just trying to do a quick demo. So we're not going to do a super fancy one right here, but you can have character 1, character 2. Obviously you can adjust the size of this if you look at it and realize it's silly for it to be that big. So just make sure you grab the correct little grab handle to adjust, oops, sorry, my mouse sticks sometimes, to grab the, there we go. Here we go. And so now you have kind of what it is that they're going to compare. And in here, they would put the traits that are unique to character 1, the traits that are unique to character 2, and what they both have in common. And we've already got it saved as a template. Now, if I close this, I'm going to hit the X. When I close this, you notice my template isn't here. Because remember, it's just a template. It's not an active thing yet that's in my slides. It's just a template that I am free to choose for this slide deck when I want to. So in order to put it into my slide deck, even if your slide deck is only going to have this one slide, right? You could have a single slide deck. You would then go to layout, well, add your slide here, go to layout and find your template. Here's my Venn diagram template, and now insert it. And you'll notice that this time, when students get it, they can click here to start typing, they can click here to start typing, and they can click here to start typing, but they can't click on this, they can't click on the circles, which might be a problem if they want the circles bigger, but nevertheless, so that's what they can work with. They can also work with the background still, they can still add images if they'd like, but we have set it up for them so that when they get their copy, and what's nice is because this is a placeholder, they can adjust the size of the box if they realize they need to, because we did placeholder text, which is intended to be accessible after you use the template as a layout in your slide deck. So I see, I'm going to check on the chat really quickly. Perfect. Before we look at some more complex examples, do you have any questions about this template feature? And you can feel free to jump on the microphone. We're a really small group. Okay. All right. So remember what I said a little bit earlier. Any template that you make using this edit master area is really just a combination of instructions, graphics, borders, colors, images, and so on. So when we start to look at some examples in a minute, no matter how complex they look, in the grand scheme of things, it's just a combination of those things. And some of these people who designed these templates just put a whole lot of these things in place. All right, so we did talk about where your template is in case you forget after we leave here today, how to get it, how to get your template. This is where renaming your template becomes really important. Okay, so on slide number 7, you have a whole bunch of resources. This link is really long, and it's not just templates. It's also other things you can do with Google Slides. And so I gave you the link, but then I also gave you a few of my favorites that I kind of pulled out. So Frayer model is a great vocabulary resource. Notice that what they did here, this person used some background colors. We'll talk about word art. They used word art here. That's actually later in the presentation. They put in a text box, and then boom, they created a box with a placeholder text in order to give the students a place to type their name. Then the students are just given a whole bunch of slides with the same template so that no matter, I'm zooming through, I'm on slide 8, 9, 10, you know, but it's all the same because it's actually intended for it to be their own little personal kind of vocabulary definition. Okay. Now, if you wanted to change, if you're a teacher and you look at this template, right? And you say, I love the Frayer model, but those aren't the 4 things I use for the Frayer model. Or when I tell them to make personal connections, I call it personal connections. I don't say 3 connected terms or people. Remember, you can go to Edit Master, right? And you can actually adjust this background text that the students can't accidentally delete. Okay, so this is just a simple example of kind of like a personalized vocabulary resource for students using what's called the Frayer model for vocabulary. Another one that I like is one way to do a choice board. There's a lot of ways to do choice boards. Now, this particular one looks a lot more complicated, but it's just a combination of master slides combined with knowing how to link stuff in one slide to stuff on another slide. And we're going to talk about that linking later. So it's not, even though it's very pretty and it has all these beautiful graphics and so on, in the grand scheme of things, it's just a combination of a variety of kinds of boxes. One thing I would do here that's missing, this particular, oh, it's view only, that's why it's not working. You would, when you go to some of these templates, you'll want to immediately go to, don't just add it to your drive, although you could. You'll add a shortcut of the master so that you don't mess it up if you want, but this is view only. So you can't use it, your students can't use it. It's really important to go to File, choose Make a Copy of the entire presentation, please. Rename it if you would like. I'm gonna move it actually into a better folder in my Google Drive so that I can find it later. So, oops, I always go too far. Oh, it opened up with my personal account. Hold on, let me switch to my, I haven't quite figured out why it sometimes defaults to my personal one when I have my, I clearly have my professional one open. So anyway, we're gonna go to File, Make a Copy. So now I'm going to have my own copy that I'm going to move to the location in my drive where I want it so that I can find it later, because I don't want to have to dig through my whole drive trying to find this. So I'm actually going to go put it in my folder that I have for Google Slides and Google Docs. I'm going to put it in Google Docs and Slides, and it's going to be there. So now what I'm going to have is a copy, and you notice it's opening a new copy for me. Whenever you choose Make a Copy in Google Drive, whether it's Google Docs, Google Slides, Google Sheets, you are creating an editable copy that is now yours. That's important to know, both because that's a good thing for something like this, where we're trying to use this as an activity for our learners, but it's also a challenge for intellectual property. When you share out Google Slides, anybody can choose File, Make a Copy, and they now have their own editable version. Okay, so you can see here that now it's more obvious that this teacher went ahead and put in a placeholder area where I can type the topic that I'm going to be working on. There's a step 1 and a step 2, excuse me, and they have to do step 1, and then they choose one of the things in step 2. That's what makes it a choice board. So they have to go to the reading section and do whatever work is there for them. Okay, now in our case, we're not signed in, but you would, so you could actually change this link though. You could break the link, edit it, change it from reading to some other thing. You can take away, this is essentially a little table. So you could go to Format Table and you could delete a row, you could insert a new row, and so on. So you could totally edit this whole thing now. Remember that if you're editing it in the background, however, you would want to go to Slide and Edit Master, and then go find this master. So let's see if we can find it. Why don't I see it? Oh no, I don't see it. Yeah, we'll have to see why that didn't show up. So that you could fix this. So since it didn't show up, one of the things you could do is copy elements and then paste them into the Edit Master area in order to get them back if you want to change anything on this template. Okay. If you like the template and reading video vocab works, all you'd have to do is change the links, and that's, you don't actually have to mess with the template itself. Okay. and then choose one here. So notice it says go to slide 2, create an infographic. Now what they didn't do here, which surprises me, they didn't make these links, but as you see, you can make something within a slide deck link to other pages. So one improvement I would do with this is actually have this link directly to the slide instead of having to click onto the thumbnail on the left. See this stuff in the gray area? We're going to talk about that later. So the teacher is actually using the gray area to give the students support and help with how to do an infographic, for example. Okay. And then the teacher provided them another option for what's called a learning bento, and about the thing that they could make a poster by using all the tools available to them in Google Slides. They could do almost like sketchnoting if they wanted to. And so she provided reminders of the drawing and shape tools that are available and so on. So this is a choice board because it starts with a template background area and then gives students some things they need to do, but also gives them an option of how they want to show their learning to you. And you can use Google Slides as a way to create those options. And you might have seen when I looked at Edit Master, the Sketch and Tell was one of the ones I could actually edit that master, for example. Let's take a look at another example. Oops, there we go. There's a thing called hyperdocs, and sometimes when you're using Google Slides, they call it hyperslides. In really short terms, it's essentially everything the students need for a complete lesson. Usually a hyperdoc or hyperslide is going to include the lesson itself, either via video that they can press play and watch, or some other means of getting the lesson content, as well as all of the processing activities and practice activities that the learners will need to do. Sometimes the hyperdoc is also a combination hyperdoc and choice board, right? Where some of the things are not required and students have some options. Okay, so it opened up in my personal account again. Good to know. So they used this template that you can actually make a copy of. If you like this template, you could go in here and you could use this template in order to create your own fully packaged lesson that includes the lesson content as well as all the practice they need within this one slide deck. So you could just change where it says what it is that the students, right now it's view only or comment only, but if I made my own copy, you would be able to type here and change that to say what the topic is about. Obviously for my language teacher friends, we could also move it to be into our languages. And then they say things like, you know, look at the whatever on the left. And then you would need to insert, you know, questions or respond on the Padlet and then create a link, however it is you want them to do it. They note this is a possible activity because this is a template for you to use. And this is your anticipatory set, your pre-learning, your bringing back of foundational skills that they're going to need in order to be successful with the lesson, or your hook to their personal experiences that are going to help them with this next topic and so on. Then this was one idea, review the Quizlet flashcard deck for 15 minutes and then complete the true false activity. So in this case, is if it was a vocabulary lesson, rather than providing a video, the teacher just said, look, the vocab you need's right here in Quizlet, go spend some time reviewing it and learning it, right? And then you can do some other activities on the next slide. And Amanda Sandoval, who created this template, gives you some ideas for places where you could do where you could provide activities. Okay. This is a really cool feature of this template. So what this is, let me, oh, I don't have my own copy going. Let me see if I can make a copy really quickly. Entire. Yes, it's fine. All right, so when it opens, one of the cool things you can do is set up a slide so that it has elements on it that the students can drag and drop. So it had, the slide in this case has a background of 2 sections, one section for statements that are true and one section for statements that are false. Oops, sorry. And the idea is that students would grab items and physically move them to indicate if the items were true or false based on their understanding of the information. Another way this could be used would be to have two categories. I mean, to keep it really, really simple, let's say in our language classes and our learning foods, you could have fruits and vegetables, and they would move the words into those categories. Or you could make you could make a table with 4 areas, right? And they would have to sort things into 4 categories or 3 categories. So the nice thing is by doing this, we didn't lock this totally down in the background. We only locked onto the background. We only locked the true, false. And then we added these text boxes with all these pretty colors, and we added them in the regular slide editing, not in Edit Master, so that the students would be able to grab them and click and drag and to drop them where they wanted. So as you can see, if you take the time later to go through this whole template, that actually looks like that was all still part of the previous learning based on the vocabulary that the students would need in order to go on with the lesson. Now they have a learning section, whether it's watching a video, learning by reading, so you can pick what you need. Here's an example of what I was saying before. This is just a modified Venn diagram. So they can drag the term and move it, whether it goes to one category title, the other category title. Sorry, there we go. My mouse does tend to stick, or both. And again, in order for this to work, the background, the Edit Master, the template portion is the black area and the text in it. And the boxes themselves, including the words category title and both, you would need to go into Edit Master in order to change the category titles. Then you would choose that layout when you're ready and when it's all done the way you want it. So there's your layout. You would choose that layout, and then in regular slides editing, you would add these text boxes, and each text box would have a different term from your vocabulary unit. So you might remember again what I said earlier. No matter how complex these look, they're all just a combination. Like if I go into Slide Edit Master, ultimately this particular one, right, is just one box, another box, and another box. Leave it. And another box. And then inside those boxes are some text boxes, right? So character 1. So I can edit all of these, and you'll notice the little text boxes with the terms like courageous, kind, helpful, whatever they would be, they aren't on this master. They get added in the regular slide editing so that they remain objects that the students can drag, right? You might just want to caution your students to, if they double click, then they might accidentally type over your words. But if they just click once and drag, they'll be able to move the little boxes with no problem. Okay, so you can change all this to your language. You can change all this. You can change all this to, you know, whatever categories you would like so that this works. And you can see that you have all of these layouts as master slides in this hyperdoc area so that you can use it and edit it the way you want. Okay. All right. I saw that there was something in the chat, so let me grab that before I show you the next template that I like. Oh, good. Nice. I like it too. And really, like I said, it's important to not get too, you know, not get too worked up over how fancy a lot of them work. They really are just a combination of, you know, yes, you put in a box. Oh, and maybe you used the, if I click, or, you know, if I do something and I click on the fill bucket in the Edit Master area, I've colored the box, and maybe I changed the line style to dots instead of a solid line. Like, it's all just using the basic editing tools and using them kind of one on top of the other, on top of the other, on top of the other to create those slides. Okay, so let me go back to here. I also found another really nice site of just slides templates. Not all of them are necessarily student activities, but a lot of them are. So like there's a slide template of a Time magazine kind of layout so that you could have your students do kind of more at-length research and reporting pieces using that slide template. There's another one that's just a series of templates on different graphic organizers. So if you went into Edit Master, you could just change the language on each, the word and wording on each graphic organizer in order to be able to use it with your students. There's a lot of ways to do a unit review, but I gave you a copy of one unit review template if you wanted to have like a template of activities for students to do at the end of a unit prior to an exam. A Jeopardy template is another kind of unit review. It's a combination of that master slides concept with linking to content on other slides in order for it to go from a correct, you know, if someone asks a question, what happens if they get a correct answer? What happens if they get a wrong answer? And that's all just linked as separate slides. So again, we'll learn about linking in a little bit. In addition to student activities, you can use this template idea in order to create, for example, family newsletters. One easy way is when you launch your Google Slides presentation, you can launch it with a template that already exists in case you have one that you like. I'll show you that in a second. But the basic steps are to choose new, and then don't just click Google Slides. To the right of, when you hit new and it says Docs, Slides, and so on, there's a little right arrow. It's also there for Google Docs, and I think for Google Sheets. Click that instead, and it gives you the option to open some pre-made templates for Docs, pre-made templates for Sheets, and pre-made templates for Slides. And we'll take a look at a couple of those in a minute. And you could use that as a start for a newsletter. Also, there are newsletter template sites. Now, there are a whole bunch of sites, like one of my favorite is actually Slides Carnival, but there are a whole bunch of sites that provide really nice templates for Google Slides. And they aren't all intended for newsletters. They aren't all intended for student activities because a lot of people use Google Slides. And so these templates are for all kinds of things. But you can see that like here, there are some different kinds of newsletter templates that you could use. So I'm just gonna look at this one really briefly. It gives you the option to do it as a Google Slides theme or a PowerPoint template. And it gives you contents and what you'll find. Many templates will give you a whole lot of not just different page layouts, but also, for example, on one of the slides, they'll give you a whole bunch of different icons that you can use in your template in order to help visually design your pages. So they have it set up kind of like this: announcements, in-depth, and brief, welcome. But of course you could change that. And then you would make this, oops, sorry, you would make this a clickable area so that it goes straight there. One way that I like using those templates actually is if you just make a simple Google slide deck, your front page will be kind of your home page for your newsletter. And then on that page, you'll include a way for them to quickly link to the newest issue of the slide deck as well as of the newsletter. And then other slides will have previous issues if they wish to look at those. So that all you have to do is update one slide. If you do a newsletter a week or a newsletter a month, you would only update one slide, but they have the link to the slide deck from the beginning. So that link will always work for the families. And then they just get an email that says, hey, your newest issue is ready. Here's the link again in case you need it. And there's a nice, easy way to use the ability to link to other slides in order to send them, to set it up so that families can quickly find the newest issue, and then how to find like the previous issues, which will just be the later slides in the slide deck. So we're going to look at changing the page layout and why you might want to do that. And actually newsletters is one reason. And we'll talk about another reason in a minute. Actually, what I said I would do, and I didn't do it, so let me go over here. I just wanted to show you that if you click New and go to Google Slides, click the arrow to the right, and then choose from a template, and you have all of these templates also available for you to use. You'll see that there's one for San Juan Unified School District, so that just depends on if others have actually saved something. I'm not even quite sure how they get there. I only see one template and I don't know how it got there. But You have templates that they think are that they say might be good for education, right? So a flashcard template that will actually, like, they click and it flips over to the other side, a certificate template, you know, all kinds of things there. Then you have some personal templates, some work templates, and so on. And each one, if you were to click on it, well, that one's just a certificate, so there's only going to be one slide. But typically, if you click on something, it will have multiple slides with a few different types of page layouts that you'll be able to use if you choose to do that template. So notice how it's got kind of everything set up, right? So for kids, this is a really nice way for them to do a science report or even a science fair project, because it sets it up for them to make sure they complete all the steps without giving them any of the answers, right? But it gives them everything they need. So don't forget that there are templates available just with the new button, and that's true for docs, it's true for sheets, and it's true for slides. And I had forgotten that I said I was going to do that, so okay. All right, so now we're moving into changing the page layout. I'm going to quickly shut my door before the Roomba comes in. All right, so when you open a slide deck, it actually has a standard layout that is intended to be the most correct layout for viewing the slides on a computer screen. But it turns out that you can actually change that, and you might want to. So under File, there's actually a page size, a page setup option to change that page size. So you would go to File, Page Setup, and then change to Custom. And you could, it's instead of whatever it says here, you would put 8.5 in the first box and 11 in the second box. And now you have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. In case, when we go back to classes, for example, or if you are finding that things are being provided to families on paper, you would be able to print this out, for example, if you wanted to. So then you click Apply. And it's so easy that the video tutorial on how to do it is 15 seconds long, but you can actually change the page setup. This is also not just good for newsletters, but it's also great if you have PDF activities that you want students to be able to write on. So I think all three of you have come to the training on Kami. That's one way to make it possible for students to edit a PDF. Another way is to do a combination of this page size adjustment alongside with Edit the Master in order to put the PDF on the background and then provide some placeholder boxes where they can type. And now what they get back is, for example, in Google Classroom, it might be a single slideshow with make a copy for each student so that they all get their own copy. And what it will have is that 8.5 by 11 PDF that you screen captured as an image, for example, and then put that image on your blank slide in Edit Master so that it's actually the full dimensions of the slide and it's locked down in the background. And then in Edit Master, you did that placeholder text box idea in order to make it possible for them to type on it. And then you just go back to your slide deck and choose that layout as your slide. And then you can go to Google Classroom and say, make a copy for each student. And now that PDF that you've had on your computer from your publisher materials can actually be given to them as an assignment. Okay, so I put in a reminder of how to do that here because it is kind of a combination of changing the page size to 8.5 by 11 and editing the master slide in order to have the PDF be a layout that you can choose, right? And then adding those placeholder text boxes. Okay. So this one doesn't take very long because it was just a, oh, I meant to put in sample flyers and I forgot. I will add some sample flyers. I've actually used this page setup a lot for making flyers when I need to communicate things out. When I need to communicate things out to teachers and also to families. So you'll see I converted them to PDF for the translated versions, but if you actually open this up, It's actually an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. I didn't have to do edit master because nobody was going to touch the content on this. This was just for distribution. But if I go to present, it's actually just paper size was changed to 8.5 by 11 so that we could also print these out. And it's accessible online as well. And then I just added what I wanted to add, my images, my text boxes, and so on. In your case, if you wanted to do a student activity, now that I've got it set up as 8.5 by 11, that's pretty nice. I would go to edit master, right? And I would see if I can find, there we go, a nice blank one. And here, I would grab that screenshot that you would have had to have already taken of the PDF, and I would put it here so it takes up the whole page, rename it, and use that adding the placeholder text to add in all the places the students would need to type on that PDF. And then I would go over here and insert the layout, create a new slide rather. There we go, hit enter. Sorry, it wasn't working. Come on. Sorry, it's being really slow. Hold on, let's try inserting another way since it's being slow. There we go. And then I would have that layout that I saved that would be called, you know, my PDF activity or, you know, some kind of activity so you know what it is. And now this could be my single slide presentation that I can send out in Google Classroom, and the students will be able to edit that content. Hope that makes sense. Please jump in or type in the chat if you have any questions. This is not something you're expected to remember all of, which is one reason why you have the slide deck, but also why this is being recorded, because we're sharing a lot of information here today about things you can do with your Google Slides. Oh, that was silly. I actually had done that to get that flyer. So I'll just share. Oh, I'm going to show you one other thing you can do that a lot of people don't realize you can do. So I'm going to actually grab a screenshot right now of this flyer. Okay. So I'm going to grab a screenshot on my computer, and I'm going to go to my presentation, and I'm going to paste the screenshot. That's pretty easy. We knew that already. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to link the image to this in case people want to see it like the way it was edited in slide as opposed to just a picture. So I'm going to change my sharing settings actually, because I have this presentation set with different sharing settings. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back here. I've selected my image so that it's outlined in blue. Click the link, paste my link, and now this image is actually a clickable link. So if I go into present mode and I click on it, it will take you to this slide that I created. So you don't have to just link words, you can link an image. And that's actually how I made this link to the table of contents, is I inserted an image of a house and linked it back to the slide with the contents. So you just choose the image and give it a link, and now your image itself is a link. Okay. So the gray space and speaker notes, you saw one quick sample that happened to use, actually a couple of samples that used the gray space. So the gray space is great for instructions and additional information. You can add text boxes to it. And remember, it won't be visible when you're looking at it full screen, but when students first click on Google Slides that you give them in Google Classroom, it's not full screen. It's actually in that editing view with the thumbnails on the left and the active slide that they're looking at in the middle. So that gray space is visible to them. So you can use it for instructions and additional information like text boxes, links to resources that will help them, helpful images and graphics. And you can do anything in there that you can do in the slide. You can change the font color, change the font itself, use bold, use underline. All of that is available in the gray space as well. So we saw on the templates page with all those sample templates, we saw some examples of how the gray space is being used. I think it works best if you're doing 8.5 by 11, but we saw a sample earlier where the teacher used the gray space with the traditionally sized Google slide. You just had to use the slider bar from left to right in order to see what was being put in the gray space. So here's a video tutorial. It's not very long. I didn't make it. and you won't hear it very well, but you can see that this is an 8.5 by 11 slide. That's going to be an interactive notebook. And now the teacher is just going to add a text box here and start typing some instructions to the students, right? And one of the things she did was she used the fill tool to fill the text box and make it white so it stood out a little bit better. And then she's going to start typing. Now I'm going to go past that because she's still typing. Okay. I'm going to go past all that and I'm going to keep going. She changed the font size, adjusted the text box size after that. And there's very little left that has to be done, but you can see she's going to add, I think, an image in a second. Hold on, my video stopped going. There we go. And then you can add additional content, as I said earlier, like images, graphics, links to resources that will help them with the activity, and so on. Okay, so it's actually just an area like any part of your slide that you can completely edit and take advantage of if you're giving out slides to students, especially if it's slides you want them to type on or do anything else on. You can use that gray space to provide them some help. And again, on the slides that have all those sample templates, you'll see more than one example of how the teachers used that gray space to either tell you as the teacher what to do with that template page or to tell the students what to do. There's also a section in your slides called speaker notes. It's actually intended for when you put your presentation in a couple of certain modes, you can actually see the notes as the presenter, and then the audience can see the, they only see the slide. It's not working for you right now because we're in Zoom, so you're seeing everything I do. But there's a speaker notes section that you can actually use, and students can use it as well. So if you give slides out to students as like slides that have lesson content, students can make a copy of that so that it's editable for them. And then they have a speaker notes section and they can type notes as they go through the content. For example, that's just one thing they could do. One of the cool things is that Google has a thing called voice typing. So I'm gonna drag this up so the speaker notes are bigger. Oops, sorry, again, my mouse sticks a lot. There we go. You click to add speaker notes and you can type, right? But there's also, hold on, let me find it. Oh, I should have looked for this ahead of time because I just forgot where it's located. But there's actually, there we go, voice typed speaker notes. So it's under tools. Notice I got a microphone and it says click to speak. Here are my notes for this slide, period. The teacher first talked about the differences between the different types of clouds in the sky, period. One of the types of clouds is stratus clouds, period. All right, so as you can see, it does a pretty good job of capturing the notes by just talking. But it can't do that on the slide itself. It can only do voice typing in the speaker notes area. You might have also been interested in the fact that you can adjust how much space the slide takes up versus how much space the speaker notes take up. So that is something you can just drag in order to change. Okay. Okay, apparently I have this open on more than one slide, but that's okay, or more than one tab. All right, how are we doing on time? Because I had a lot to share. We are almost done. All right, let me tell you about how to link, because that's really important. The other things were just bonuses, so let me tell you how to link content. So linking content to another slide is an important feature of choice boards, and it also is used in a lot of other ways. So table of contents is one of the things I used it for today. When you create a hyperlink, most of the time you just paste the link to some website that you wanted to click to. But there's always been this option that says slides in this presentation. And if you pull that down, it will pull up every slide you have and allow you to select the slide that you want that link to go to. So that's actually how I made the table of contents, was by choosing I can choose anything I want. I can click to add a link. And instead of pasting a link from the web, I just pull down where it says slides in this presentation, and I can choose any slide and it will immediately jump them to that slide. So that's really useful for things like the Jeopardy template, and so on. And as you can see at the end of that, I actually provided, again, not from me, I didn't have to make all these video tutorials because someone already made them. So I linked you to a quick video tutorial of what that looks like. Or maybe I did that one, I can't remember now. Another way to do it. So a choose your own adventure slide deck where they can click, what do you think happens next? If you think this is what happens next, click here. If you think this is what happens next, click over here. The instructions here are actually for students to create their own, but obviously teachers could use those same instructions to create a choose your own adventure type of activity for their learners. And then I also have the corresponding template slide deck that goes with these instructions. So you could create an activity that's kind of a choose your own adventure, or you could have students create choose your own adventure. This also works with the Jeopardy game, the choice boards, and the newsletters, because you would link, for example, you would provide a way for them to link to the current issue of the newsletter, and then a way for them to link to past issues. And those would all just be slides in the same slide deck. So the rest of what we have here is actually, for example, a demonstration of how I did this, like how to do animated elements on your slides. One is the simplest way is by adding what's called a GIF or a GIF, so that you can just take someone else's animations and put them into your slide decks. Okay. I also gave a little tip about a little weird quirk with using the site Giphy. There's a couple places you get the link. You must get the link from the correct location or Google Slides doesn't recognize it. There's also a great extension that gives you a search bar for Giphy. So no matter what your open tab is, like if you're an email, you'll be able to find a GIF quickly to add, or if you're in your slides, or you'll be able to find a GIF that you can put into your slides. I don't recommend necessarily sharing that with students because not all GIFs are appropriate for learners. But as you can see, when I open the extension, here I am editing my Google Slides, and I can go look for a GIF anytime. You can also make your own. So we don't have time to go over that today, unfortunately, but I did give you the step-by-step instructions. And if you're interested, I can show you a demo of how to change this into a blinking, like a blinking box, for example. No problem. This tool can handle, Vanessa, shoot, can you remind me, Vanessa, which one? Which specific thing for the accent mount, for the accent?
When you type, when you were talking and they were typing and you're talking.
Oh, so it had an English, it had a selector to change languages. You may have to have also already on your device selected other languages as optional inputs, but let me go out and see if it'll work. Hold on a second. I don't know if I had to add anything. So let me click to add speaker notes. Let me go to my tools. Let me go to voice type. It might not have one. Yeah, English. I'm going to pull it down. Okay. I probably shouldn't choose one of these languages I don't speak. So hold on. Let me go to.
Okay. They have Espanol.
Si, oui, l'espagnol. Et on peut taper les notes comme ça. Ouais.
Also, okay, cool.
Yeah. It's
Perfect.
Pretty cool.
Perfect.
So you could have students use that area to check their pronunciation. I love having them use voice typing either on their phones, like you know how you can dictate your text messages to your phone, or asking Siri questions on their phone, because if Siri can't understand them, then it's either a vocabulary problem or a pronunciation problem, right? And they can also use this tool to kind of gauge how comprehensible their language is.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. So again, I know we don't have time for the demo of the Blinky, like how I can use this actual software on my Mac to make animated things, which is how I made this one. Oh, apparently I also told it that I wanted to use the, hold on a second. Let me, oh, I know what I did. Ah, that's annoying. All right, I'm gonna have to fix that. I accidentally changed my blank layout to Venn diagram, so it's not a happy camper. Let me just title only, and then I'm just gonna eliminate the title because I'm annoyed with that. There we go. All right, so if you're interested, I do have instructions that you can follow. it's not the easiest step. It's a little more advanced. And then the last part of the slide deck is more cool stuff. So I don't know if you knew, there's actually different bullets. So if you look at my slide, I give you the steps on how to do it, but you can change bullets to a whole bunch of different shapes in Google Slides. So once you say to put the bullets, just go ahead and pick normal bullets, then right click on any bullet in your list and choose more bullets. And then it gives you a symbol, and then you can choose emoji, for example, and then it goes through all the categories of emoji and you can pick any of them to be your bullets. Okay. There's a new way to, you can add audio to slides using Screencastify. And Pear Deck, for those of you who remember Pear Deck, they just launched a new feature that makes it even easier to add audio to slides. You could theoretically just use Pear Deck for adding audio to slides and not put in the interactive activities, and you would have a slide deck with audio on every slide to support your learners. So that's brand new, and I'll be showing that actually in next week's Pear Deck training because they just launched it. Yeah. And then if you didn't know about Explore, I remind people about the awesome Explore feature that I would have normally demoed, and then a couple of things you can do with your images in order to help them stand out a little bit better. Okay, so that's it for today. But I thank you for coming, and this recording will be available, and this slide deck will also be in the Distance Learning Hub on the Technology Training and Resources page as well.